I was really excited when Daniel came to me and asked, "Hey, will you speak on the mundane?" I was like, "Yes, I got this." Because as you can imagine, raising children, if you've done this, I know a lot about mundane. The first thing that popped into my mind was laundry. Okay, good. All right, we're all on the same page here, right? Laundry is the most mundane thing that happens all the time. I go around the house, I collect all the little things under the bed, under the couch, because it never quite makes it into the hamper, right? Fill up that laundry basket, take it out, pour it all into the washing machine. Fill the little cup up to the blue line, pour that in, close the lid, turn the dial, press the button. I've done this a million times. 5 kids, 1 amazing husband. That makes 7 people under one roof. And the problem is they wear clothes every single day. And so if you can imagine 7 people, 1 washing machine, right? That's 7 pairs of socks per day. 49 pairs go into the washing machine every week. That's 98 little cotton tubes that I'm washing every week. And just as soon as I think I get all the laundry done, of course, you look over to the side, and the laundry basket is half full again. It never stops. Collect, dump, pour, fill, close, turn, push, over and over and over and over again. And so this doesn't just apply to laundry, though. I mean, there's lots of other things in life that are over and over again. It could be walking the dog, making dinner, doing the dishes, going to work, just waking up every day, doing the same thing over and over. And not just laundry, it kind of takes me back to when the babies were little. And that was just the simplest, mundane existence. Remember, you wake up, you feed the baby, you change the baby, you put the baby to bed. Maybe you get something to eat. And then you feed the baby, you change the baby, put the baby to bed. And then you clean up a little bit, maybe quick, before you feed the baby. Change the baby, put the baby to bed. And then you might get to make dinner, but of course you don't get to sit down and eat it because you're going to have to feed the baby, change the baby, put the baby to bed. And then you're exhausted. And so you go to bed, you wake up, and you do this all over again the next day. And my memories of that, I remember being so frustrated. I mean, it was great at first, but I can remember looking back and thinking, isn't life supposed to be exciting and joyful? And there must be something I'm missing, because every day I'm doing the same thing over and over. And why am I just getting frustrated with it? Maybe I need to find a way out of this mundane routine. Maybe I need to find purpose. And I felt myself craving something more than just the same over and over. I think we can get kind of annoyed by this, even just in our life and in our worship and in our faith as well. The same thing kind of over and over again. Because we know God, He is so big and amazing, and He's done excellent things in our world. And we compare that to what our life looks like. And sometimes it just doesn't match up. Are we doing something wrong? I mean, why does our life just keep spinning around and around and around? Maybe you should read a book, and that'll tell you how to kind of get out of the mundane, think about it all differently, or a retreat where you could just kind of leave it all behind, not have to worry about just that cycle of life that just keeps going. But our search for hope and life and purpose almost starts looking like just an escape from the mundane cycle. I once knew a gal when I lived in Georgia. My husband was a pastor there for 8 years in St. Mary's, Georgia. And so actually, driving here from the airport, the freeway looked exactly the same as I remember, with the trees lining the side, and I'm like, oh, I feel like I'm home. The little swamps every once in a while. So I knew a gal there in Georgia. When we first moved there, we had somebody taking us around to just kind of show us the sights. It was a very small little town. So my husband and I, being from California, were like, hey, where's the local coffee shop? Oh, yeah, right. She kind of looked at me. She's like, well, you can get coffee at the gas station. I'm thinking, all right, we have a very different understanding of what a local coffee shop is. That's okay. But a couple years later, I knew of this gal and her family who started one of those coffee shops, with the comfy chairs, and I think the walls were painted red, and they had the trendy music going on, and you could come in and get a little scone or something from the bakery counter in the back. And so it was great. It was a blessing to our little community, because we actually had somewhere besides Walmart to go and just relax and hang out. It was a small town, just had Walmart. So it was great. It was wonderful. Now, my husband and I had one afternoon where, of course, we were going to go get a cup of coffee, enjoy ourselves for just a little hour, escape from the mundane for just a second. And we walk up to the door, and there's a little sign, handwritten, that says closed. Now, this was normal business hours. Everything else was going on. There's no reason this place should be closed, but all the chairs were up on the table. It was dark inside. All right, we went home. Small town. We can get the gossip pretty quickly. And we found out that this gal who had opened the coffee shop not too long ago, she was tired of the mundane, fed up with it. She left. She moved to Africa. I'm totally serious. She left her husband and her kids and her coffee shop because she did not feel like she had found her purpose in life. She felt like there was something greater that she needed to go do. And so she left the mundane. And I think about her every once in a while when I consider my life and what I'm doing. Is that the answer? Is that what we need to go do? To leave the mundane behind? To find the real purpose that we've been given? But back to laundry. Because if you've ever done laundry, you know that it doesn't stop at the washing machine. What's next is you have to get all those little socks out of the washing machine and get them into the dryer somehow. And this is where I'm convinced that we lose them all, because they find little places to go that you didn't even know existed in the washing machine. You got to get your hand up like under the lip and things like that. So finally we get all the socks and all the little undies in the dryer, close the door, turn the knob, push the button, over and over again. Same old thing, day after day. And no matter how hard I work on laundry, there's still going to be more tomorrow. I could spend 8 hours doing every single little piece of laundry in my house. And tomorrow, there's going to be more. And I feel like there's something wrong. I mean, why isn't this getting easier? Why isn't it getting better each day? Shouldn't I be progressing just a little bit past where I was yesterday? Same thing, over and over. It gets exhausting. But more than just my little piles of laundry, we have these mountains in our life that are just so exhausting to climb. And speaking of mountains, exactly a month ago today, my husband and I were on the highest mountain in the contiguous 48 states, Mount Whitney. We took 24 days and hiked the John Muir Trail. And so it was for our anniversary, which was exactly a month ago today. And so there we are, standing on top of the mountain. And I was thinking about the journey that it took to get there. This was really, really hard. We started out, and I thought, oh, I got this, no big deal. I almost didn't make it. I cried 3 times. But I made it to the end. I made it out. Here I am. I'm alive. But I remember back to that second day. We had to do our first pass that day, and it was 12 total that we would have to do. Donahue Pass was that first one, and it was so hard. It was so hot. You know, my legs are burning, and I'm sweating through everything, and my lungs haven't quite caught up with the altitude, and I'm just like climbing up this mountain, and I'm hungry, and my husband doesn't think I'm going to make it, and it was really hard. But finally, after 3 hours, we get to the top, and I look back over the mountain that we just climbed up, and it was a victory. Finally, I had gotten to the top, right? So we took a little break, had a little water, and we continued on the trail, right? Now, I don't know why I didn't realize this before, but as we started the trail, it went straight back down the other side of the mountain. And every step that I took, I was so upset. What was all that work for? I just went up a mountain for 3 hours. And every step down, I was more and more frustrated because of where I had just come from. And it all seemed like, and I knew what was coming. There were 12 more to come. And so all of it, I started to really be frustrated at the whole endeavor, at the whole trail. Why am I going up if I'm just going to come right back down? I should probably just stop right now. And I know you see this too in the things that we work so hard for, because eventually they come undone. We climb and work and go up this mountain just to find ourselves walking right back down the other side of it. I want to read you something from Ecclesiastes. For everything there's a season, and a time for every matter under heaven. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, and a time to pluck up what is planted. A time to kill, and a time to heal. A time to break down, and a time to build up. A time to weep, and a time to laugh. A time to mourn, and a time to dance. A time to cast away stones, a time to gather stones together. A time to embrace, and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to seek, and a time to lose. A time to keep, and a time to cast away. A time to tear, and a time to sow. A time to keep silence, and a time to speak. A time to love, and a time to hate. A time for war, and a time for peace. What gain has the worker from his toil? You've heard this before, right? Yeah. It seems like there should be some comfort here, right? Mamas say this all the time, especially when, you're having a hard day or your children are really acting up or something like that. They come up and they say, it's just a season. That's supposed to be comforting because this season will pass and there'll be another one that we'll get to do, right? But what's interesting in these verses is there's a season for everything. So you saw that there's a season for the good things for sure, but there's also a season for the bad as well. One doesn't outweigh the other. The cycle and the seasons keep spinning around and around again. It goes right back to where it started. There's a time to weep. There's a time to laugh. There's a time for war. There's a time for peace. Nothing lasts. We start to realize that mountains and valleys, good times, bad times, there's a season for everything. Everything under the sun. actually is mundane. So Ecclesiastes is written by, he calls himself the preacher or the teacher. And this guy looks very similar to the guy who wrote Proverbs, which is it's the book right before Ecclesiastes. So you have the teacher, the preacher, son of David, king of Israel. The author of Proverbs is Solomon, son of David, king of Israel. So if Solomon has written, or is writing Ecclesiastes here, he's a pretty smart guy. If you remember, he was given the wisdom of God. And so Ecclesiastes is taking all this wisdom and knowledge and searching out the very same thing that we're looking at today. Meaning. Is there meaning in anything? And so, like he says, I, the preacher, have been king over Israel in Jerusalem. I applied my heart to seek and search out by wisdom all that is done under heaven. It is an unhappy business that God has given to the children of man to be busy with. I have seen everything that is done under the sun, and behold, it is all vanity and striving after the wind. Now he searched everything: wisdom, foolishness, pleasure, hard work. He tried it all. But everything turns up mundane. Everything comes back around to where it started. All things are vapor, breath, just shadows. But I know what you're saying, right? Oh, I love God, and I know what he says about things. You know, I have meaning and purpose in doing the right thing. Well, if you remember, Solomon wrote Proverbs, the book that comes right before. This, if you've ever read Proverbs, is the ultimate path of righteousness, of the right way to go, not the wrong way, what the wise do, not the foolish. You know, it teaches you things like how to tame your tongue, how to live your life, how to do things with your money, all these things. So if you were to read Proverbs, you'd think, all right, I got a pretty good handle on this righteousness stuff. There's meaning and purpose there. I can do that, and that'll be enough. But this is the same guy who wrote Ecclesiastes. He searched out even that wisdom and said, under this sun, even this righteousness in the hands of men comes to nothing. There's a time for wisdom and a time for foolishness. He actually says here, the wise person has eyes in his head, but the fool walks in darkness. And yet I perceived that the same event happens to all of them. Then I said in my heart, what happens to the fool will happen to me also. Why then have I been so very wise? And I said in my heart that this is also vanity. For of the wise as of the fool, there's no enduring remembrance, seeing that in the days to come all will have been long forgotten. How the wise dies just like the fool. And so even this good and righteous purpose that we think we're doing down here is still vanity, shadows, not to be trusted in for very long. And this is scary, right? We're having a scary conversation right now because what do we trust in? We don't like to dwell here too long. We kind of want to ignore the fact that we're caught in this cycle that we have no control over, that the seasons are spinning around, that we're living in this mundane world, and we can't actually do anything to fix it. We want to hear how successful we are. Here's where we want to hear that there's something that we can overcome here. There's something that we can do to make tomorrow a little bit better. But that's not what we're talking about today. What happens when we realize that we're living in this mundane? And I don't know all the things that you struggle with: boredom, anger, jealousy, shame. And I don't know the things that you take pride in: friends, wisdom, wealth, pleasures. But for a moment, consider what Solomon is saying here. Nothing you do endures. Nothing will last. And I know what you're thinking, because believe me, I'm there at the end of the laundry cycle when I'm pulling those beautifully nice, clean, white socks out of the dryer. They smell like lavender vanilla, and I'm folding them up, matching them perfectly, of course, putting them back in the 7 drawers that they belong in, taking that empty laundry basket and putting it back onto the shelf. As I'm doing that, I step in a pile of crusty, dirty socks that are just mocking me for the end of the laundry. It's not over. And the question I have to ask is, why? Why am I doing this? Why do I keep doing laundry over and over just to step in a pile of dirty, crusty socks one more time? What's the point? Anger. It's really frustrating to consider that we have no power to change this endless cycle. And the preacher who searched out everything, he agrees. So I hated life, he says, because what is done under the sun was grievous to me. For all is vanity and striving after the wind. I hated all my toil, which I toil under the sun, seeing that I must leave it to the man who will come after me. Angry at our absence of control, desperate when we realize that we're not really changing anything. And we're witnessing this anger in the community today. I mean, when's the last time you heard about a school shooting? An angry, desperate young man who has lost all meaning in life, who's overwhelmed by the mundane, seeing no way out. We're powerless to change it. And I know what you want from me right now. You want me to give you a way out. You want me to tell you what you can do to change this and to make a difference. But I can't. And you can't. This is our mundane. But we haven't answered our question yet. Even if we could admit that we're living in the mundane, we haven't answered the question, is it meaningless? Is there meaning in the mundane? Now, it's interesting to look at our Bible translations, especially in Ecclesiastes, when we're talking about this subject. The Hebrew word used in Ecclesiastes, it kind of means like vapor or shadow, what we're talking about under the sun here. That word is hevel, and it's used 5 times in this little 8-word sentence, over and over and over again. And now listen to how the NIV translates this word. Meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher. Utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. So we kind of get an idea how the translators of the NIV have gone with this word, meaningless existence. But that's not only what it means. there's the idea of it being that shadow, it's not solid, it's not to be trusted in, a breath, a striving after the wind. Some translations will call it vanity. You've heard that maybe, vanity of vanities. And so we're looking at this world and we realize these things can't be trusted. They're vanity, they're shadows, but they're not meaningless. You know, I know, that under this sun, that is not where our hope rests. That is not where our life and our purpose is. Beyond the sun, an eternal life that comes with a new world. The Son of God was with God before the sun, coming down into our shadows, into our mundane. He walked, he taught, he lived, he died, and he rose up to eternal life beyond what we know as our mundane shadows. He came as a frail infant, but the enduring Word of God. He was flesh and blood, but he came to give everlasting life. It's more than just a shadow. It is a more true reality that actually endures beyond this sun. And you know, Christ came, but he could have done it so differently. He could have impacted our society in so many different ways. He could have come and been, popular and, on Twitter and Facebook and everything like that and telling everybody about what was going on. But instead, he was born to an unknown family in Nazareth. He told disciples things in parables that they couldn't even understand. He could have pulled himself off that cross, showed everybody that he was the Son of God, but he didn't. He came here to the shadows to literally wash feet. He came with so much more than just to solve what's going on in the shadows. He came with something beyond what was under this sun. Vanity of vanities, says the preacher, all is vanity. Vanity, not lasting. Here today, gone tomorrow. Sure, of course. We can boldly say that because we know that a new heaven and a new earth is our future. So when we say this is a shadow, we can say absolutely. Not to be trusted in? Yep, you're right. And so you're free. You're free from worrying about your work and your play and your wisdom and your foolishness and everything that you do under the sun because you know that's not where your purpose and your hope and your meaning is. It's beyond what we have right here. You're free to trust in what's everlasting. You're free to trust that you are forgiven, that you're totally free, that you're an heir to an everlasting kingdom. That's what's real. But just because this stuff doesn't last, it doesn't mean it's meaningless. Because here, in the mundane, Christ's walking, his healing, his loving, even his dying, that means something. Your walking, your loving, your healing, your dying, that means something. You are the meaning in this mundane for all of these people sitting right next to you. Because this is how God cares for his creation. He uses you. When somebody drives to work brings food and bread and electricity to all the people in their house. When you make something trustworthy with your hands, this provides something that somebody else needs to survive. When you do a load of little white socks, you're giving God's provision of cozy, comfy toes to all shapes and sizes in your house. You are doing God's work. And it would be really great if God put a gold star on our forehead every time that we were doing something for somebody else, or maybe gave us that feeling of purpose or that like emotion that we were doing something. But he doesn't do that. As a matter of fact, I think he likes to keep those things, excuse me, I think he likes to keep those things to himself. We have a parable that Jesus tells in Matthew 25 about when the king comes. He tells the righteous that when you're hungry, you gave me food. When I was thirsty, you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. And the righteous look at him, and they're like, we didn't do those things. I don't remember that. And that's the point, is you don't know what your hands are doing for God. Those who inherit the kingdom are blessed by the Father. They've done amazing things, and they don't even realize it. You are doing amazing things that you probably don't even realize that you're doing. And it's not about figuring out what you have to do, the best way to live, the most righteous thing that you can do to give yourself meaning and purpose. It's not about that. You are doing the work of God for your neighbor. He's already given you those things to do. Since you've been justified by faith, you have peace with God through Jesus Christ. You've obtained access by faith into this grace in which you stand, and you can rejoice in the hope of the glory of God. That's real. You are justified. You have peace with God. There's nothing under this sun that changes that. So you can rejoice in all of it. And so, enjoy it. On account of Christ, this mundane is but a breath. Enjoy it. Jesus gave you an eternal future to look forward to. Enjoy it. Eat, drink, take pleasure in all of your toil, because you are doing God's work for somebody else. Enjoy it. You're the hands and the mouth of God, communicating his eternal word in this passing reality. Enjoy it. Enjoy every single second of it.